Welcome everyone to 3VR's exciting webinar series. Today we're going to be talking about unleashing the transformative value of video with customer counting. Thank you all for joining, and today we want to make this an interactive session. We've got an exciting panelist, Darren Ruger, the AFN Managing Director, with us this morning. And so if you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to ask those questions in the chat window, and we'll try to get to those throughout the presentation. If we're not, the chat session and the questions will be available for you afterwards. So my name is Nick Wooler. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at 3VR. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm really excited to have Darren Ruger all the way from Australia as the AFN Managing Director, and he's got some exciting stories and important information around how we are transforming video for retail organizations, especially in the APAC market. So without further ado, let's dive right into the topic area. And today, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about AFN and what they do in the different markets. We're going to talk about some of the industry trends that are facing us, and then 3 examples of why counting changes everything. And then we'll talk about some ways in which retail analytics are also doing that, and then talk about some different next steps and questions. So that's what we're going to cover today. And again, Darren, really, thank you very much for joining us this morning, all the way from Australia.
Pleasure, Nick. Thanks for having me, and hi to everyone out there listening.
So, Darren, tell us a little bit about AFN and how you got into the market, 3VR, and in the video surveillance industry.
Great. Okay. So back in 1997, I just finished serving with the Department of Defence here in Australia, and and my background is electronic engineering, so it was, what do I do with myself going forward? I actually started dealing with a company doing facial recognition 15 years ago out of the United States, trying to make it work. And I was sort of working with them here in Australia, trying to get it off the ground in policing and defence. And, we had the struggles that facial recognition had for many years, which was, accuracy and, detecting motion on moving targets and all those sort of things. And, we really found a place for what began as AFN back in, 1997, trying to get involved in both facial recognition and license plate recognition. And, and as other people that have been involved in those type of analytics know, long, hard slog. And, for many, many years, the technology just really wasn't there. So we took the next best thing as a company. We got involved into video surveillance, and and we really, in Australia, we kind of pioneered a bit of the IP market. We installed one of the very first ever DVRs in the country back in 1999, and we probably trialled amongst the first ever IP cameras back in maybe 2001, 2002, which were tragic. And that, coming forward, we always wanted to be at the cutting edge, always wanted to have the best stuff. We've always been a smaller company, much more niche, much more customer-centric, very focused on, the demands of our customers with regards to providing them with the very, very best technology. And that brought us up to a few years ago where we encountered 3VR.
I mean, that's why we love working with you, Darren, is because you guys are, willing to be flexible and you do some exciting work, and you've got a long history of video surveillance market. But it's not just about security, right? I mean, you obviously serve a number of other verticals as well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about those different places you're using, not only video surveillance, but the other capabilities?
Right. So the interesting thing is, I remember sitting down with my general manager at the time about, 8-10 years ago, saying security guards are going to be a dinosaur soon. At some stage, this amazing technology that you all think that I'm crazy for wanting to be part of is going to transform the way security is done, because we're going to be able to analyze everything. We're going to be able to use things like facial recognition, license plate recognition, open gates. So as you can see there, one of the verticals we're in is transport, logistics, as well as in mining and critical infrastructure. I identified that one day a surveillance platform would be able to do the things that a security officer sitting at a gatehouse does. And, happily, thanks to 3VR, we've actually been able to start making that a reality for some of our customers, where we can identify, vehicles coming into depots, being able to cross-reference their access passes with their license plate, with their face in a lot of instances. So that's, something we're really using 3VR for. But the biggest revelation to me, since working with the 3VR team in the last probably 2 and a bit years, has been that, the 3VR is, security can almost be an ancillary benefit of the amazing things that we get out of it with people counting and, your advanced object tracking analytics and the analytics to come, which we can talk about later in the presentation. But the people that we're talking to now, we definitely would have never spoken to 10 years ago, and we definitely would have never spoken to 5 years ago, because now we're talking to the marketing teams, we're talking to the retailers, we're talking to people that really, security, they don't really care. They want to know, give me some retail information, give me some information about the humans that come into my premises. Security can be a great benefit, but hey, we want to know about customer trending.
Yeah. We hear the same thing. I mean, especially even for the security teams that we face off against, they find the marketing teams and the merchandising teams allies in helping them find the budgets that they need to make things happen, especially in this constrained environment. So you have some exciting customers, the notable ones that we put on here: Australia Post, Pandora, Caltex. Those are some exciting names, especially in the Australian market. We look maybe hearing a little bit about, some of the exciting things you're doing with them as we go through the presentation. How about if we dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. So I thought we'd maybe talk a little bit about some of the retail industry trends that we see happening in the market. One of the things that's happening in the United States, I'm sure it's happening in Australia as well, is the emergence of the mobile-based payment systems. With Google launching Google Wallet, Starbucks and other retailers looking at introducing, mobile-based payment systems. It's a whole nother way and threat vector that retail organizations need to make sure that they take stock of and have security around. We also see, shrinkage continuing to rise. The latest research from the Global Retail Theft Index is proving that out. And then we've also got the traditional problems of identity theft, employee fraud, all hitting us at the same time. You mentioned earlier, Darren, which I was really excited to hear you talk about some of the early adoptions of the IP cameras. But, the industry's still transitioning there. We see a lot of companies coming to us saying, hey, can you support IP as well as analog cameras? And then they're also looking to integrate with business and security systems beyond just video. And so, the open platform is a critical piece of what we're seeing in the industry. And then last but not least, the current economic environment, the global economic environment really is causing a lot of security organizations, but retail organizations and businesses in general, to try to find ways to get as much out of an investment cycle as they can. They've got, fewer resources, so they're looking for ways to optimize and be as efficient as they possibly can. Are those the same sort of trends that you're seeing in the Australian market, Darren?
Yeah, completely. One of the things that I've often been proud of being Australian for is that we're very early adopters of technology. So the transition to IP here, whilst it's probably been a little slow, slower than what I want it to be, because I want everything to happen yesterday, because I'm sort of always racing ahead. But we're really seeing a lot more retailers now, particularly the small retailers, are saying, look, you know what, if we've got to upgrade our surveillance system, let's upgrade it to IP. So, I work a lot of for a lot of time with 3VR and bringing the IP technology up to a really terrific place where we are now. And I've got to say that 3VR's ability with megapixel technology is absolutely terrific. It's a beautiful seamless integration. There's a lot of IP cameras that you now do integrate with on a high level, and that really gives the marketplace a lot of comfort, because some people have dabbled in IP here in Australia, have some legacy IP equipment, And a lot of the times we're finding going into customers that we can just walk in and go, oh, that's an XYZ IP camera. Yes, we interface with that, and we can just come straight in and migrate their technology. You're absolutely right, though, about reduced budgets, reduced resources. A really big impact that we're seeing since the GFC. Not that Australia really got affected. We were one of the countries that, because of our enormous resources and resource sector boom that we've had for the last 10 or 12 years, we didn't feel the impact of the GFC like Europe, United States, United Kingdom did.
Yeah.
However, there has been a distinct rationalisation of security spending over the last 5 years, where we are for certain seeing people not wanting to spend as much money on, on a human resource like static guarding. They are asking so much more of their security platforms that, it's like, okay, if we're going to spend $750,000 on upgrading the surveillance platform into a shopping centre, we need to see an ROI on that. And the ROI would generally come from being able to cut some human resource somewhere.
Yeah. So or go ahead.
Yeah, so that's we're seeing that, all the time.
Yeah. It definitely bears out the similar stories we hear from customers as well. Where they may be growing in the number of stores they have, but they're not adding the security resources to go along with that growth. And so they've got to find ways to reach and be more efficient in how they secure those premises. But hey, we've been talking a lot about security. I know these next couple of topic areas we want to get onto is really how it's changing the retail organizations as well. So if you look at some of the loss prevention challenges that companies face, they're not just faced with solving crimes or protecting their business, but as you mentioned earlier, they're really focusing on how they can grow that business by using the existing services they've got today. It's not just about security. It's about, hey, can I use video to improve some of my customer metrics or customer service or sales training? In fact, as companies move into the security space, they're really looking for ways to make security easy, to make video search performance one of the most important things that they deal with, so that they can get through hours of video in minutes rather than having to do lots of manual searching based on time and lots of viewing. Data integration is critical, and facial surveillance, as you mentioned earlier, is still an evolving space. It's not an exact science, but using tools like that to get to the video that you need to see are critical ways that they make it more efficient for the security teams they face off against. And we also see that managing large deployments is also a big problem, especially for distributed deployments like you would in the United States or in Australia or in large APAC markets, where they've got a lot of retail stores where they've got video being consumed and recorded, and then a small security or retail merchandising organization that has to see that video from a central location. And so that's why we've really tried to focus on what can our solution do that is beyond just that security and manageability challenge. How can it help organizations grow? And Darren, you talked a little bit earlier about that, and we're excited about hearing some of the stories you have about, how video analytics is really changing the face of retail stores and how they're using it. So,
right.
So why don't we talk about some of the 3 examples that you mentioned in our conversation, about how counting is changing everything.
Yeah. So we probably didn't really, because we're not a marketing company, we're a security integration company. So we didn't really appreciate until we started working with retail and marketing how powerful just that simple little 2 lines that you draw over a doorway would actually be able to impact the business. When we started becoming more involved with the marketing people, they were explaining to us that, well, hang on a sec, the first thing you have to understand about being able to count people is it's awesome to know how many people in our store, but then we talk about conversion rates. And some of our customers, quote conversion rates of 70%. So a lot of the complaints, a lot of, and I'm sure in the US it's the same as well, a lot of retailers have used passive beam technology to actually make their counts. And a real frustration of, for instance, a franchisee is that they're being told by head office, for argument's sake, well, the counter says that you had, let's say for argument's sake, 500 people came in, but you only converted 50% of them into sales. Or, or the actual counting output has been skewed because, we all know that the passive beam technology and other technologies that are non-video analytic actually have fairly significant failure rates. One of the things 3BR has been able to give a lot of our retail customers, well, in fact, all of our retail customers that use people counting, is there's video to back up the numbers. So, because we're able to actually analyze the video, detect individuals as individual pixel masses, we can say with now as accurate as 2%, 98% accuracy, 2% error at a worst case, and we've got tons of data to back this up across hundreds of stores. If we tell you had 100 people come into your store, you had 100 people come in, and then we're getting much more accurate conversion rates. And stores that were traditionally reporting 50 to 60% conversion rates because they really didn't know how many people were in their stores, now are saying, well, actually, we're getting 60 to 70% conversion rate because they really do know how many people came in the store. The thing from the head offices of the retail franchisees and retail groups is now they can look at it and go, well, now we can look at things like staffing optimization. How many people should we have on from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and from 11 to 2 and, and 2 to 5? And, and again, we talk about in a very financially constrained market, retail is always the first to get hit when, when there's, budgetary constraints. People are tightening the purse strings. First thing that suffers is, is generally retailers, clothing, jewelry, all the non-essential items. And so they're the first ones that want to actually go, okay, how do we keep our margins, nice? How do we keep everything looking good? We obviously, we have shareholders, we have this, we have that we report to. And staffing optimization is just a simple way to make sure that not only do you not have staff on when you don't need them, but you do have them when you do. For argument's sake, a lot of the Australia Post is a classic example. They have peak times of first thing in the morning for 2 hours, then the lunchtime rush, and then the afternoon right after work rush, and then there's a few hours in between times where they simply don't need the staff on, but they need lots of staff on in those peak times because everyone just goes crazy.
That's a great example.
Right. So then that translates directly into how do I manage my stock levels because these are my peak times. Do I need to have the internal courier companies that work, within, one of my big retailer organizations, and I'm sure one of your big customers, for instance, T-Mobile, I know would be doing this themselves of, well, if we have a 9 o'clock rush, do I have my courier go in at 11 to restock the shelves for my 12 o'clock rush and then again for my 4 o'clock rush? Because again, it's people nip out either before work, lunchtime or after work, to buy, those kind of items.
Yeah, no, those are great examples. And, we have a couple of ways in which we, illustrate that. So I'll let you explain, how do customers actually calculate true conversion rate and how does that drive their business?
So the base level of conversion rate that we have is simply humans in the door to sales. Now, sales is generally not a dollar figure, it's just a number. So as you can see from this slide, Monday had 450 sales. They had 1,025 customers come through the door. My suggestion is someone would be getting their butt kicked for that conversion rate in the Australian market. But, this is where we have to identify is, is this conversion, accurate, and what are the precursors to success or failure of that? And this is data that traditionally speaking has not been accurate. Particularly, again, I don't want to bang on about the beam counting, the beam technology or passive beam technology, but you know yourselves out there that with a beam counter or whether it's vertically mounted or horizontally mounted, if you walk in as a tight group, you're counted as one object, and if you leave individually, you're counted as multiple objects out. That instantly means that one came in, 5 left, your conversion ratio is immediately destroyed because they don't know who they actually sold to.
Yeah.
That's one of the beauties of the 3VR technology. We can pretty much say exactly who came in, exactly who went out. Right. If we move to the next slide, where we can actually show the next example here, this is where the retail conversion table becomes a little more accurate. We have, again, the sales, so the number of sales on the Monday was still 450. The number of customers that came through was still 1,025, but we can see that the staff on board was 10 to service those 1,000 customers. So, okay, we're starting to get a bit of a clearer picture about our conversion ratios here. We're spending a lot of money on sales staff to make those conversion rates. So still something's not quite feeling right. What are we missing? And the thing that we're working on very closely with 3VR, as we've discussed, with yourself, Nick, and with the technical team, is let's add in our point of sale system to this. 3VR has one of the most open, easy to use, easy to write to point of sale interfaces I've seen in any DVR or NVR, in 15 years of working in the industry. And why not, have the team at 3VR help, your customers write this point of sale interface, because then what you've got is 450 sales, 1,025 customers, 10 staff, and then you have the magical number, the dollar figure that you actually turned out from those 450 sales. That's when this all makes sense.
Yeah. And it's those integration of those different data points that really allow the companies to make the business decisions they need to, right? I mean, that's where we're moving as an industry. It's not just, one step in that direction. It's an evolving space where those different data systems, when they combine, really make video and a video intelligence system rather than a dumb DVR that sits in the table and just records, video, right? You're talking about passive beam technology, right? There are limitations to those, cheap and cheerful systems, and when you're really managing, tight margins, as you talked about earlier, making sure that you have the right data is really the only way to make good decisions. So let's talk a little bit about, our next example, which is optimizing stock. How does customer counting, help organizations do that?
Look, the interesting thing about this is this is where 3VR is a lot more holistic than just the people count. So, if you say that, again, you had your number of people came in, you made that number of sales, yes, you can start to build a trending pattern around, what stock you need to replenish those shelves. But the really unique thing that we see from the optimization of stock, more so than just the people counting trends, is some of the analytics that we're going to talk about a little bit later on, that actually give us more data to lend to the traffic counting.
Yeah, and we see similar things, Darren. I mean, one of the things that is interesting is, stock is an expensive item, and getting that right is important. And I loved your anecdote earlier about, managing based on peak times, right? If you've got a peak sale period in the middle of the day, from 11 to 12, having the right staff number to restock your shelves, before that next rush comes in is a critical way of making sure you have the right placement of items, out on the floor. You're not going to sell something if it's in the stock room, right? So, love that example earlier.
Well, and to be able to schedule the most effective courier times, because as you probably know yourself, a lot of retail outlets, and I can certainly speak to this in Australia. Australia obviously has, a very big shopping centre culture, where companies like Westfields that you now have in the United States, the floor space is an absolute premium.
Yeah.
So the back rooms for stock storage in a retail environment are generally tiny. So what we see here in Australia is a typical model is if you have a 60 square metre shop, you would maybe have a back room that would maybe be 5 square metres. Now that has to be able to store, the staff's bags and personal effects and all the other stuff, and a little bit of stock. So the people counting, working on peak times and trending of when the biggest impact times are, really also helps with booking your couriers of when they can actually come in. Because if you know you have a lull between 10 and 11, your courier will come and restock your shelves right then.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I mean, you think about logistics, right? The time it takes to make sure you have the right stock from the depots. Having that better information, not just point of sale, what got sold information, but actual, peak usage times by your customers coming in the store makes your logistics systems that much more efficient, right? You're making planning cycles more efficient.
Yep.
Yeah, love it, love it. So let's take a look at, basically how the system works. So here's an example of, an interface, our op center interface, and how we draw the configuration line to entryways. And you can specify that line as a straight line or a fan to accommodate different traffic patterns based on the type of entry you have at your store. Some stores have promotional displays to the left and right as you walk through a door. And so you want to create maybe an arc there instead of a straight line to accommodate and make the counting more accurate for as customers walk through and then turn that left or right. And so a lot of the configuration of how the counting takes place, which video channels you apply it to. You can apply it to one or several channels based on the number of entries that you have into your store. And so you've got that flexibility in Op Center to set it up and tune the configuration to get the best accuracy. Darren's comments earlier of the percentage accuracy, it's really built on how much you're able to set that up and the flexibility that the tool gives you to tune it over time. So we're really proud of what we've been able to do beyond just the passive beam and other technologies that exist out there, even other video systems that do customer counting.
I think the other great thing about the counting analytic that maybe everyone out there doesn't understand, but one camera doesn't necessarily just have to have one count line. What we do at most of our customers is we actually use the one correctly mounted camera that's nice and high above the front door. We set up lines at the door so they can count in, but then you can actually set up a one camera up to 4 count lines on a camera. So quite often what we do is we set the front door line and then a left turn line and a right turn line bi-directional as well. And we actually have all 3 lines, and sometimes in shopping centres up to 5 lines report, wow, giving amazing detailed data back of, okay, 300 people come in, 200 turn left, 100 turn right, and of course right in front of you is a banner so you don't go any further ahead. But you get that really clear data, and the more counting that you apply throughout your retail, the more of those lines you can use. I mean, you still get the amazing surveillance footage. You're covering great surveillance, but you're getting some very, very accurate trending data around where people travel within your store just by setting up some lines.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing insight there too, Darren, especially if you think about it from a marketing perspective, maybe that 200 left, 100 right is related to a marketing display that you put up or a promotion that you're running on that left-hand side of the store. So
absolutely.
So you can think about some of the other ways in which that data and video together are really powering some marketing innovation as well as promotional innovation inside retail organizations. So that's the interface. So Op Center is the place where you assign analytics to cameras, you configure the system, you set your alert thresholds. Because one of the things we didn't talk about earlier is, you can set alerts that go to store staff or management, based on certain thresholds that you want to as well. You can also set the reporting options, where they get emailed, where they get exported to, within that Op Center interface. And then Report Viewer is the next logical piece. It's where you see the reports. It's where you analyze what's happening in your business, and it's where you share the important insights that are occurring. It also gives the ability to export, for those of you that are running, internal reporting systems for your business metrics like Crystal Reports or Business Objects or some of the other systems that exist out there. And as I mentioned before, you're able to email those reports, export them for internal BI and reporting tools. And also, as Darren mentioned earlier, we do have an open interface and an open platform that allows you to use web services to consume that report data as well. So if you are using Business Objects or some of the Oracle BI tools out there, there is an interface there where you can get a standardized output and import that into your reporting systems for your upper level management. Darren, you mentioned earlier too that you're from a security background, and 3VR started in the security space, and we like to say it's easy security because not only do we do great retail analytics, but we're also using the combination of point of sale data and facial surveillance to find patterns that other security tools miss. So can you tell us a little bit about how your customers are using this inside their different environments?
Yeah, absolutely. The facial detection system that 3VR has is, obviously it's sensational, and it was one of the eye catchers for us. When I first got introduced to it, it was, oh, it does face rec, and oh, stop, everyone does face rec. But then talking to 3VR, actually it's facial detection and then recognition by human interface. And straight away that instantly became more interesting because it was basically saying we can detect faces. All you've got to do, and I already knew, set up the cameras correctly, we'll detect any face, then you can add the data to it. So super exciting to know that was available. And how you can see here on the slides is exactly how we use it. We have customers or whoever, individuals, come into not only retail environments but all of our environments, logistics, critical infrastructure, mining, everyone's using the same technology. We want to be able to detect every face that comes into our premises. And, for a lot of integrators out there, you'll know that, particularly in retail these days, they actually do want to be able to pass on an identifiable face to law enforcement. 3VR assists that so strongly by not only allowing you to capture a face, it's detecting the fact you've caught a face, but then opening fields where you can put in data regarding that face, and then by using the similarity confidence bar that you can see there next to the face on the left-hand side of the slide, you can actually set to detect that person every time they come into not only your environment where you captured the footage, but if you're part of a larger enterprise at any facility. And we've used this to enormous success, not just in a security capacity, but also in a retail capacity for tracking where our customers shop.
Yeah, now those are powerful tools, and they're, as you talked about, the similarity index allows you to adjust it, and we do see customers using that, specifically to search on transactions or locations, and they use it primarily to look for patterns of organized crime, or see potentially how others might be involved in assisting with crime in wider groups, so building those stronger cases for retail theft that does occur, and combating that shrinkage problem we talked about earlier. So again, one of the other things that we like to point out too is the ability to really look at those event cards and putting eyes of trained professionals on the video that matters. And so they can either search by a transaction or a face, to get at that data, and as you mentioned, build a stronger case in the tools that exist there too. So one of the other examples I thought would be interesting for the audience today is really how easy security builds itself out and how we integrate with a Micros XBR system. Micros XBR is a point-of-sale system that does exception-based reporting. And it's an example of one of the ways that 3VR does data integration with business systems. And the reason why this is important is in Micros XVR, you can run a report, and it looks for patterns in transactions. Transactions which, based on the rules that you put in and some of the intelligence that it has, it believes are exceptional. They're not the norm. They're things that they want you to look at, to confirm that there isn't fraud or isn't a pattern of bad behavior by one of your internal employees, occurring against those transactions. And what we've done at 3VR is we've built in the ability to click on that transaction of interest in the XBR system and then link video directly to it. So if you think there's a suspect transaction, you can now look at the video associated with it, so you can put those trained eyes on the information as quickly as possible. What that allows you to do is determine, hey, is it a problem? Is it a situation of interest? And then you can look at additional pieces of evidence, such as license plate transaction or license plate recognition. If you've got external cameras or a drive-up window in your retail outlet. And then it allows you to do and give more information to those security and local law enforcement and build what we call stronger cases, to either analyze the event for store management. Maybe it's a situation where customer service can be improved in an exception-based transaction. Maybe it's an exceptional employee that did a very high level or high amount transaction that got kicked off in a exception-based report, and you want to draw attention to that employee about the sales tactics that they use. But more likely, sometimes it is law enforcement, and you are building strong cases, including multiple points of evidence, and that's critical to really making sure you can bring that criminal to justice. So we're proud of that integration, and it's another way in which we're not just taking retail data and putting it in the ability for the organization to grow, but we're also solving a security problem as well. So Daz, I'm not sure, you have some examples of license plate recognition which you use or have seen inside some of your organizations that you deal with?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the, we deal with a number of petrochemical companies, and one of the companies that we've dealt with previously for a number of years has an issue with fuel theft. Now, unlike in the United States, we don't pay at the pump here. We actually have a trust system whereby you fill your car with fuel and then you have to go into the retail outlet to actually pay. The main reason for that in Australia is we have very low margins on fuel. It's like, maybe a 3% margin per litre on fuel. So, you go into the store, and what the hope is from the fuel companies is that you buy a bunch of stuff on the way through to the till, and then you turn up with your Coca-Cola and your chocolate bars, which of course they make, a significantly greater percent of profit on. One of the issues we've had right throughout Australia, particularly when fuel prices go up quite high, indexed to the oil price, is fuel theft, where you'll come in, fill up a tank of fuel and leave. We started working with 3VR on the license plate recognition around these, as we call them, drive-offs, some time ago, and to enormous success, whereby if someone had basically stolen fuel, we knew which Bowser it was from, and because we have the camera set up to capture the license plates, we can actually use 3VR to distribute that license plate right throughout the entire enterprise. So if that license plate turns up at another service station owned by the same group, their license plate will flag immediately. The attendant standing behind it, activate the pump from inside the retail, won't activate the pump. The driver of the vehicle will wonder why not. He'll walk inside the store where his face will be captured on the facial recognition camera behind the counter. So immediately we have 2 points of ID, being the license plate and his face, so we can marry them up in a case management file, and we can say to the gentleman or lady, sorry sir, last time you were at one of our service stations, which was service station XYZ, you didn't pay for your fuel, so I just need you to fix that up for us before we turn on the pump. Now, 9 times out of 10, they know they're caught on camera, quite embarrassed, and so straight away, they'll pay up. If they decide to run away, however, we have all the information that police need, a very clear facial recognition shot and their license plate. So by using those two methods, we've seen fuel theft at those particular service stations drop dramatically.
Wow, that's a great example, Darren. Thanks for sharing that with us. Yeah, it does bring life to combining the video evidence with the license plate recognition and how it works for solving crimes. So, that's just a couple of examples. We also have other video analytics that are available in the platform. We talked about customer counting today, but we also have advanced object tracking, which is available today. And later this summer, with the 7.0 platform, we'll be launching queue-line analysis and dwell and loitering, which are two powerful analytics that will add to the types of information that we can provide retail organizations. Queue-line analysis will allow you to set thresholds on a particular line, and if the line gets above that threshold as far as the number of people in that space, it can alert store management to either bring on additional staff, or it can provide you with ways to track that over time. So you think about combining that data with customer counting, and then along with that, the dwell loitering analytic, which allows you to measure the amount of time that someone might stand looking at a display before they actually make a decision, or the loitering analytic, which might measure how long someone stands outside a store before coming in. There are ways that you can provide different levels of advanced information, actionable information, about what's happening in your retail environment. And Darren, before we were talking, you mentioned some examples about how you're using advanced object tracking to do that today for some companies. You want to share that with our audience about some of the exciting things you're doing right now?
Yeah, right. So, and that's indeed right. So one of our customers, a huge customer throughout Australia, asked us to basically give them some detailed information about not only how many people per week came inside their store, but what their habits were when they were inside the store. So as I mentioned before about setting up multiple count lines, we did that to start with to basically generate a trending overview. Then we use the advanced object tracking analytic to set up boxes around certain areas within the store, within the retail store, to find out how long people stayed inside those boxes. And then we also set up more tracking boxes at the tills. So what we discovered with this particular customer was that 9,000 people, or a touch over, came into their store in the course of 1 week. We discovered that 92% of those people basically turned immediately left and went to one particular stand where, thanks to the advanced object tracking analytic, we discovered that the average time spent in front of that particular stand was 22 seconds. So people would come in, turn left, spend 22 seconds looking for the item. They would then find the item, and the crazy thing was this. They then spent 6 minutes in the queue to be served.
No.
Now, as you can imagine, the CEO of that group went grey instantly, pulled some hair out, went, this is just insane. But it was the reality. People came into this environment, they knew exactly what they were looking for, and then it took them that long to be served. So then, this goes straight back to what are retail doing, what are marketing doing, what are HR doing to obviously staff the store. Maybe make that stand not as easy to get to. Maybe drive them past other stands, because it turned out that 92% of everyone that walked in the store went straight to that stand. So how do we put that stand somewhere else to make them walk past other stands, but maybe they'll buy other stuff?
Yeah, or maybe even add additional staff to the tills, right, to move that 6-minute number down.
Well, in fact, what they're actually looking at, because they realize that they, and in this particular instance, simply didn't have enough tills in the store. So looking at moving to a completely different model of servicing their customers, whereby potentially they have people on the floor with, with scanning technology where they can take your credit card straight there, right on the floor, receipt generator on their hip, and, be able to service those customers that are only buying that one item right there.
Wow, that's a great example. I mean, it definitely is a powerful example of how numbers And to the quote you mentioned earlier, right? What isn't measured can't be managed. If you don't know what those numbers are, how do you even draw that picture as a retail organization? That's a great example, Darren. So so let's talk a little bit about how 3VR does that for organizations. One of the ways it does it is through our powerful data integration platform. We have an open platform that not only allows you to access and integrate with point-of-sale systems and alarm panels, but it also allows you to integrate with access control systems. If you've got sensitive areas in pharmacies or, in the case of phone systems, behind closed doors, and you want to make sure that people badge in, there's ways to also monitor that access. And for those of you in the banking environment, we have a wide variety of ATM and teller integrations. We manage some of the largest banks in the United States, with combining ATM and teller transaction data with our video data. But not only that, but we also have the ability to apply other video analytics. So not only facial surveillance that we talked about, license plate recognition, customer counting, but our coming analytics with queue line analysis, dwell time, and again, available today, advanced object tracking. Customer traffic will be out in 7.1, and we're looking forward to that. It's a really powerful way of also managing and looking at how people interact with your overall store environment. Maybe hopefully bringing out some more of those anecdotal stories that you mentioned just before this, Darren. So sorry if I keep hitting the back button, but we also have a number of video applications like Ops Center we talked about, the case management capabilities that we talked about, but also other capabilities like spot monitors. So those of you that need to look at video in some of your critical infrastructure environments and need to look at live video as it occurs, Spot Monitor allows you to do that. We didn't talk a whole lot about this, but Alert Viewer allows you to view video associated with alerts that you configure in your system. And then also CrimeDex, which is a tool in the United States we use to integrate and use social networks of crime fighters to help solve retail crimes faster. And then last but not least, as Darren mentioned earlier, stitching together a large deployment across many different organizations can make it difficult. So we've got a number of enterprise management applications that help you make that easier. Things like user management integration, the ability to monitor your system remotely and set health check alerts in case cameras aren't recording video. That can stop you from having to do inadvertent truck rolls to go and fix cameras. You know whether they're up. You know how to only make the movements to the situations which need your attention. And then last but not least, one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is the configuration templates that are available that make a high-quality deployment consistently across a large number of retail organizations, available, and that improves the quality and hopefully we believe the cost associated with those deployments, especially across thousands of stores. So the next area that we're going to talk a little bit about, is the way that we deploy that. We deploy through our FSeries, our PSeries, and our server class products. Again, from whether you're managing 4 cameras in your environment, 16 cameras, 32 cameras, or up to 64 channels of analog. And all of our products have hybrid and MVR variants, which allow you to be strictly IP if that's what your environment is recording today. And so we have the right configuration for your location, and we serve a number of critical verticals, banking, retail, healthcare, critical infrastructure, hospitality, and commercial industrial. And we're proud of the customer list that we have in those different environments. So if you're interested in taking next steps with 3VR, there are lots of easy ways to get demo and training. You can go to 3vr.com. You can look at applications and system design 2-day training courses as well as online training courses, and easy ways to do lunch and learn sessions with some of our sales staff that are out there if you're considering being a partner. We also have a number of different partner options, partners that we like to be associated with, like AFN and other global partners out there. If you're interested, register with us. There's an easy form you fill out on the website, and that avails you not only to partner training, but partner pricing and marketing programs to help you get the word out about the great stuff that you're doing with our technology. And then last but not least, hopefully you may be at Retail World in Sydney, Australia. If you are, you're very lucky, and we wish you all the best. Stop by the AFN booth that's there. It's occurring the next couple of days. We're really proud of what they're doing with 3VR, and guys like Daz and his team are really pushing how video is transforming organizations. If you're in the United States, we hope to see you at As Is, which is our next big upcoming event in this market. And then obviously we continue to roll out the number of webinars on different topics like this one to help you understand where video is really transforming things. So Daz, I'm going to turn it over, I think, to questions and answers. And one of the questions that came in, while we were presenting was from, you mentioned resources. And the question that came in was, you mentioned the mining vertical. Can you give us some of the information about what you're doing in that vertical with 3VR's technology today?
Sure. Look, this is so left of field that people are probably going to go, "Are you serious?" But here was the problem. Coal mining has this crazy thing where they build up these huge piles of coal, and underneath the big piles of coal is an underground chute that basically drops the coal down onto a conveyor belt system and takes it out to a train to be loaded, which eventually goes to a port and drops it into a ship. Okay, so crazy. Anyway, they open these chutes, the coal drops down, but then coal, because of the nature of coal and, and it's sticky, has this crazy degree angle of incident that it actually stops flowing. So you have to send these enormous bulldozers up to the top of the coal mound to keep pushing coal down the hole so it drops onto the chute. Well, these dozers, if any of you are familiar, are D12s, which are about as big as a 3-story house, and they're enormous. And from time to time, they actually fall into the hole. Go figure. So, which sounds crazy, but of course what happens then is the entire mine has to be shut down while you rescue the bulldozer and the driver, and you can't push any coal out, which means the train can't load, which means the ship waiting at the dock can't be loaded, and it has to go back to the end of the queue and wait for potentially a month to be reloaded again, because there's like 20 or 30 ships out waiting that are huge super carrier things waiting to be loaded. So then it would become the next mine's turn and they would do it. So potentially you can lose, the estimate from the mines is up to $1 million an hour would be the liquidated damages against the mine for not loading that ship. So the mines came to us and said, how can we do something to prevent our dozers from having this crazy thing happen? Straight away, I jumped to 3VR and went, hang on a sec, they're advanced object tracking. We can do something around this. So working really closely with 3VR engineers, we came up with a way of basically interfacing a Doppler radar with a megapixel camera with the 3VR to detect when the bulldozer got too close to the edge of the cone to fall into the pit. And thus, if the dozer got within what we call the kill zone, we could actually flag an event on a HUD inside the dozer to actually tell the dozer to start driving by vertical camera view, because the camera, the megapixel camera, is actually mounted on a gantry sitting above the coal pit, and the driver can then actually stop what he's doing, look at the HUD, and actually go, okay, I'm too close to the kill box.
Wow, that's not a great example of an open platform and a business benefit. That's a great story, Daz. Wow. So another question came in, which is a little bit more retail focused, and you talked about drawing multiple lines in the camera analytic earlier. Do you need to change the number of cameras to do that, or is it just something you draw inside the interface itself?
Well, so generally what we find when we go into a retail environment is they don't have a camera set up in an optimal position for counting. So that's the first thing we find. So generally a really easy conversation to be had. How accurate do you want your numbers? If they say, look, these numbers are really important to us, then we say, well, you know, you have 5 cameras in your environment right now. You can keep those same 5 cameras, but we need to relocate one to put it over an optimal location. Quite often we will need to change the lens to make it a bit more of a, you know, a much broader picture. So maybe go to a 2mm lens. Then through the system manager, we can go in and actually create as many lines as we like wherever they are and still give them a really broad picture. What I would suggest that most integrators look at doing is actually reviewing, before they actually try and sell a 3DR box or people counting or advanced object, if they're the things the customer's after, is actually go in and do a review of the surveillance platform. Most of the analog cameras just need it clean and they just need to be refocused. But more often than not, we'll need a lens change, because generally when someone, a retailer, has made the decisions about their own surveillance, they won't see it from a security perspective. They'll see it from a retailer's perspective. So go in, advise them on changing the lenses, advise on a couple of camera relocations. And I know that, you know, this sounds like I'd be doing myself a disservice financially, but quite often I say to customers, you actually don't know what you've got with your surveillance system until you start using the data. And so I basically implore all of my new customers, if you've got an existing camera network, keep it, let us clean it up a little bit, let us implement the 3VR, let us switch on the analytics that you want, and then tell me that you're not happy with what you've got before we go and make the key investment on new megapixel technology or so on and so forth. Generally speaking, customers have got enough surveillance coverage to get a lot of stuff that they never knew they had.
Yeah, that's a great story too, Daz. I mean, even if you have to make some small camera changes, it's probably less than, you know, what it would require to put in a whole nother counting system. So
absolutely.
Yeah, especially with some of the counting systems using, you know, annual charges and or, you know, other annual fees to make that up. You know,
well, one of our key competitors in the Australian marketplace, which obviously I won't name, but you know, they charge 8,000 Australian dollars per door to count.
So yeah, so those per door per annual charges do really add up.
Right.
Yeah, and so, you know, the ability to use the existing technology, maybe with some small adaptations to make it better, you know, the types of data make it a lot easier to deploy and get the value that you need to. So
the return on investment's a lot quicker and, you know, and a lot simpler and less downtime for the store if all you have to do is relocate a single camera or even implement a new one. Much cheaper.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. Well, hey, Daz, we're running short on time, and I really want to thank you so much for being here. Before we go, though, I know that there's a big event happening later this year in the Southern Hemisphere, and I, believe it or not, am a huge rugby fan. My dad trained me well growing up. He showed me the art of rugby, and it is a fantastic sport. So before we go, we like to ask our guests to give us a prediction about an upcoming sport event. And so I'm asking you now, will you go on record and give us that prediction of who is going to win the 2011 World Cup? Will it be England? Will it be Australia? Or will it be a Southern Hemisphere team that I have not named?
Well, I can understand that you probably take some joy into putting me into this position, as you know that I'm a long-time rugby player myself, and you know where my allegiances lay. And unfortunately for my Australian listeners who are going to lynch me right after, I'm a crazy All Black supporter. That's the New Zealand team. I have been my entire life. And if New Zealand does not win this next World Cup, I probably will not watch another rugby game ever in my life, and hang up not only the playing boots but the supporting boots forever.
Yeah. Well, as a person who's represented your country in the battlefield as well as a company you run there, I'm sure they'll give you a little bit of slack.
We'll see.
All right. Well, Daz, thank you again for sharing not only your great knowledge and experience, but also your great your great stories and personality with what we're doing. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you very much, Nick. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. And like we said, we'll be posting this up on the web after the presentation. You can download it and or share it with some of your colleagues. And we hope to see you at an event coming soon. Thank you very much.